Hi, everybody. It's Susan again, and today we're going to have a look at Saturn, which is finally stationing direct on Friday, Friday the 15th of November. It was retrograde since the end of June, so basically from the 29th of June until now. It started its retrograde at 19 degrees, I think it was 1925. Let me check my notes there. 1925 of Pisces, and it is retrograding back to 12 degrees 41, which is exactly where it is on the 15th, but it actually is kind of there all this week. So these things don't need to be terribly exact. You don't need to worry too much about these degree points again unless you really want to calculate something that you want to start, or if it's really to get the degrees in terms of your own chart correct. If you have something between, I'm going to say 9 of Pisces, because it's Saturn, 9 of Pisces until 15 to 16 degrees even of Pisces. This concerns you because now this energy of Saturn is quite strong, and of course, the closer it is to 12, 41, the stronger it is. Now, Saturn retrograded on my Saturn, and it is stationing direct on my Sun. So please spare a thought for me. So I just want to talk you through how this is moving through the rest of Pisces for the rest of the duration of its direct motion. And then Saturn moves out of Pisces on the 25th of May of 2025. So basically from now, 15th of November, until the 25th of May, it's in Pisces the rest of the way. So it's going to go from 12 degrees right the way through to 2 degrees of Aries. It's just under 2 degrees of Aries, actually. It's like a degree and a half. And then that on the 25th of May, ingress with into Aries is with Neptune as well. So it's a very interesting journey from pretty much the month of March through April and May, and into June through the retrograde motion back in October, where Saturn will be with Neptune. That's another story, and I will tell you all about that later because there's so much to talk about in the meantime. So we'll leave that one until the new year. Um, and so this journey of Saturn has been roughly 3 months, 3.5 months. It's almost 40% of the time Saturn is retrograde. So it's not unusual, but it is something that tends to be noticed, and especially if you have those degree points, or if you might have them by opposition, perhaps you've got those same degree points, let's say from 9 till, we'll be generous and say 16 of Virgo, or if you have the same 9 to 16 of Gemini or Sagittarius, which is, by the way, where we find Mercury on this day. Mercury and Jupiter, but Jupiter is out of the picture for now. Saturn has done its square on the 19th of August, the first square with Jupiter, and it's preparing to have its next square with Jupiter on the 24th and 25th of December. But again, these are such slow-moving planets that these things last for days. So don't get too attached to the day itself. There is something of an energy of intensity around retrograde planets, I find. Some people say they lose their power. I don't know how that would even be a thing. The symbol is very much the symbol. Saturn is Saturn, whether it's direct or retrograde. But I find that the retrograde is where it's kind of like the teacher assigns you the homework when it's direct, and then the teacher is standing over your desk when Saturn is retrograde, and you get to kind of everything is looked at with under a microscope. And certainly that is has been my experience of these last 4 months, because the energy here, or I guess three and a half, we said, yeah. The energy here has been about having to redo something, make it work, find where the obstacles are, find where the conflicts are. In my case, for example, I have Saturn in my ninth house. I have it natally as well. And I have Jupiter going through my 12th house as a Cancer rising, and we'll get to all of the different signs in a moment. But just as an example of how this can work, and I have this natally, as I may have mentioned, that there is always something that is blocking or delaying or requiring attention. So it's kind of like on the way to going somewhere, you get this kind of uh, I don't know, detour that ends up having to, cost you time. Usually it's time because it's Saturn, and effort. Of course, Saturn is also about effort. In my case, Saturn is in the ninth house of publishing, and Jupiter is in the 12th house, also about foreign lands as well. Jupiter, roughly in the 12th house, can also represent loss. Um, and when it's retrograding, there is a feeling of things not really working out in that Jupiterian positive way. It tends to pick up when it goes direct again. I have them both Saturn and Jupiter direct in my chart, but at the moment we have Jupiter retrograding. And since Saturn was retrograding, nothing really is panning out in terms of the project that I had, which is my book, which was the thing that I had really hoped to uh, I don't know, pie in the sky. I thought I would get it out in June, and then I thought, no, don't worry, it'll be September. And now what happens is the ninth house is not only publishing, but it's also legal contracts and legal issues. And I happen to be delayed in this project by because I think some of you might know, I translated a book, an astrology book over the past 2 years. It's done. It's all done. And I added things to it, and I have all kinds of ideas that now need to be completely reworked because the people that I've been trying to get an agreement with, who are the inheritors of the copyright of the French author Anne-Marie Pelou, who was the original author, um, they're really, for who knows what reason, they're dragging their feet. Or is it just because Saturn is retrograde? I don't know. Anyway, point being that it's delayed. And so now I've had to, of course, as I do throughout my life, surrender to the fact that my plans are not working out as intended. I think if you have Saturn squaring Jupiter, especially if your Saturn is ruled by Jupiter, and your Jupiter may not be in good dignity, you might know some of these stories that I'm telling you. Like there's always something like this that's just almost comically disruptive, but there you just have to go with the flow. That is it. So Saturn knows best. I feel like we are here to learn from life rather than tell life how annoyed we are that it's not working out according to our plans. And Saturn in Pisces is really also about that. It's about adapting to the unexpected or adapting to things being out of your control, beyond your control. Finding boundaries in the boundless. That's another Saturn in Pisces way of looking at things. And certainly with the Jupiter square, which by the way, we're really growing into now that Saturn is moving direct. And that Saturn Jupiter square may still show up in things that are not really working in the way that we had hoped would, or that they just feel like there's a drag, there's something that is slowing us down. So I'm not despairing yet. I will hope to find an IP lawyer that I can work with and sort out the bits and pieces. In principle, they're motivated to do the project. It's not that, which is even more baffling as to why they're delaying it. Anyway, so I ask you to send your best intellectual property vibes over the internet to get this damn thing done. Anyway, so for the rest of us, for everybody, Saturn, when it stations and goes direct, is starting to allow things to feel a little bit less slow or stuck, or it's kind of like we got the lesson and we understood the thing. Now think back to the end of June, but really think back to all of June, because as whenever a bigger outer moving planet, a slower moving planet, is stationing, whether it's direct or retrograde, it's slow. It takes a long time to do its thing. So pretty much all of June, Saturn was at 19 degrees. And just like now, pretty much all of November, Saturn is at this 12 to 13 degree point. So, go back in time, go back to June and see what was going on. What was the the thing that you were working on. What was the big project or the aspiration in your Pisces area of your life? And we'll look at that in a minute. And how is that now understood and needing maybe some new action taken on it, a different degree of maturity or a different degree of seriousness than you may have given it before, um, a degree of humility. Hey, there's a great Saturn word, humility. Just this feeling of, okay, yeah, I'm not running the show. I just have to do this thing. There are certain conditions. There are three-dimensional conditions that are preventing me from getting this thing done. So whatever your thing is, we'll have a look sign by sign to see if we can touch on those different things. My guess is you already know what the thing is because it's Saturn, and each of us there will be something in every life that feels like it's just not really working the way we had hoped it would. And what feels like limitation or restriction, or somewhere where we need to put more effort, is the thing that now is finding a release. I think that we will not really fully find the release until Saturn finally leaves Pisces at the 25th of May. And most especially, I think whatever Saturn has been having us work on throughout this time, that since March of 2023, 7th of March 2023, um, Saturn has been having us work our way through this part of the chart. And only when Pluto moves into Cancer, even though initially it will square Saturn, Pluto, good grief. Jupiter, you see, it's time for me to have a holiday, by the way, which is what I will be doing. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Jupiter will be moving into Cancer, where it's exalted. And Jupiter, of course, is the ruler of Pisces, and it will grace by trine, in a very harmonious trine, all of the area of Pisces that Saturn has had you work hard towards. And that picks up the energy in a way that feels extremely constructive. And then from June onwards for a year, Jupiter will be blessing that area, and including when Saturn moves back in to Pisces in the autumn of 2025. And then Jupiter will be Saturn's boss until it leaves in February 2026, once again, but from a really good place. So don't despair. You're picking up steam as the weeks go on towards the end of the year and then throughout 2025. Just a little plug if you are interested in knowing what's going on, generally speaking, in the major shifts of the 9 planets that are changing signs in 2025, with the exception of Pluto. Then you might want to get my 2025 recordings. So I have the forecasts for every sign, whether it's your sun, moon, or rising sign. And I will do a little video. I keep promising it, but I will get around to doing a video about why sun, moon, and rising signs are very interesting and how we even make that make sense. So some of you are asking, and I will do that, I promise. And so, yeah, let's have a look sign by sign because I think we're onto something finally. You know what this thing is, I'm sure, but I'm going to just maybe point out in some areas of life where you might feel things are shifting. We're going to start with Aries because, of course, I just shifted the clock. This is not exactly the time that Saturn is stationing. Again, with a slow-moving planet, that's almost irrelevant to look at the clock. It's kind of pointless. Maybe with the moon, you might want to time things really exactly, but let's face it, it's been at 12 degrees for ages, so no big deal. So Saturn is shifting on the 15th of November, and it's moving through the 12th house from Aries, sun, moon, or rising. So again, if it's your sun sign, it's more your career or your sense of purpose. The sun is exalted in Aries, and so there's something very important for Aries sun to pay attention to. Always for Aries, you should absolutely listen for your sun, even if you're also Aries rising. But if that's the case too, then you're double Aries, and therefore you'd already be picking up on that energy. So if it's the moon, this will be something that you feel. It's your emotional nature. When Saturn is in the 12th, there can be a bit of a downer. This is one of the ways that we measure a person's happiness or psychological state is the different transits to the moon, So it's not that the moon has no importance. I don't know where this idea comes from that you should only pay attention to your ascendant. It's kind of a weird thing that just kind of popped out of the ethers about a year ago. And it's like, what? Where? So anyway, do listen for your moon because it's part of your very fundamental self. It's your mind and your emotional nature. And that's how you navigate life from the inside out. And so with Saturn in the 12th house, there may have been times where you felt a lot of restrictions, limitations to perhaps your overall sense of enthusiasm for things, maybe feeling a little bit down, or feeling a little bit limited in terms of your self-confidence. Um, and also, perhaps even in terms of your faith, Saturn can test your faith in the 12th house. You feel a little bit more isolated, even on a spiritual level. There may be something that feels that is lacking, but it's in the testing of the faith you become more strong in your faith. And so for many Aries, that might be something that is happening while Saturn stations direct and moves forward through the rest of Pisces and into Aries, where you get to trust more in the mysteries of life. You trust more in the invisible forces of life. If this is something to do with faraway lands, people at a distance, or clients that you might work with who are international clients, for example, family that's abroad, or any kind of relationship to confinement, like confined places, anywhere from monasteries and convents and retreat centers to clinics and hospitals and prisons and places that you don't really want to be confined in. This can also unlock itself, something, not to say that, if you're watching from prison, I can't really help you just in terms of Saturn stationing direct, but certainly if you are feeling mentally imprisoned, which is definitely what this quality would be, you recognize that you can be free wherever you are. And that is something that allows you to feel that sense of relief. And if it's about a physical complaint, whether it's psychological or physical, health complaint, or something that's keeping you in a clinic in some way, shape, or form, this can also unlock the solution to the problem. You also start to get serious about issues that might be holding you back in terms of your self-undoing, things that you might be, habits that you might be engaging in that you shouldn't be, or things that you aren't doing that you should be. So whichever way, and that Saturn is actually going to help you feel a lot stronger from the inside out than Aries. And then by the time Saturn enters into your first house, you're really prepared for that, and you have this sense of, okay, now I know what I need to do. I know how I need to grow up or buckle up or whatever for accomplishing what I want to in my life. Now, Saturn rules your house of career, and it rules the 11th house of friends. And so this is part of the story. Whatever is going on behind the scenes is affecting your career or your social status, and it also affects how you engage socially. And so what this does is, it shapes up perhaps your sense of your goals and your ambitions as well, while you're reflecting on, for example, like, does my job or my career or my vision for my ambition align with my spiritual beliefs? For example, this would be one way that this Saturn now stationing direct will help to inform you and give you some better sense of a bigger yes or a bigger no. All right. And certainly Pluto is playing a role in that. I'm not going to go through all of the other aspects. It's really focusing on Saturn now. Just happens to be that there's a full moon, but that's for another video. So thanks, Aries, and I'll see you in another video, perhaps about the full moon. See you later. This is for Taurus, Sun, Moon, and Rising sign. Saturn has been in your 11th house since March 2023, and that has been reshaping your groups of friendships and your socializing in general, and also your vision for the future. So as Saturn has been retrograding, you may have lost a bit of faith in terms of your hopes for the future, or a sense of who you might share the future with, like who are my people, who are my groups that I want to be with, who are my friends, like who is there for me in my social life, and recognizing perhaps that you have been let down in some ways by certain people, or that you realize that it's time to change friendship groups. Like, for example, when Saturn was transiting my 11th house many, many years ago, I'd be like 25 years ago now, when Saturn was going through my 11th house, I had just had my first baby. So my daughter was born, and all of a sudden, like all of my friends and colleagues and everybody that I used to spend so much time with and had a lot in common with just kind of went poof, just poof, gone. And so there were, of course, a few friends that stayed, and especially people who were at the same stage of life as me, having a family and so on. But I just suddenly reoriented my friendships, and my friendships that I started to develop were based on the solid sharing of interests that were important to me at the time. So all of the new friends that I created around that time, I still have now. They were friends who went through the thick and the thin of the early years of child rearing. And so these are the kinds of friends that you want, Taurus. You want those people who are real friends. They're not like the ones who just want to go to lunch because you happen to have some insider information or whatever. Um, when that phone stops ringing, then you start to look for people who are sharing your values and sharing the things that you want to see going forward. So this is a very positive thing in the end. And certainly now that Saturn is moving direct, I think you're going to feel that unlocking, that you start to build relationships with people in a way that feels like, yeah, this is actually going somewhere, where it may have felt a bit like a fallow period up until this point, since June. Again, you would have had a similar kind of experience in the summer and autumn of 2023 when Saturn was retrograde then. So you can look back on that and see what that felt like too. So either way, you're moving forward now because Saturn is going to continue all the way through your 11th house. And it goes, if it's your sun, for example, these might be relationships to do with professional or political or other kind of social clubs that can bring you support. But first, Saturn in the 11th house feels like there's nobody really there. But then you start to get really serious about it. And again, if it's your sun and it's with reference to your ambitions and your professional life or your just your personal goals, then that can also be that you were previously feeling a little out of place, that you couldn't find your place, and then you become this kind of authority in your career or in the social groups and so on. And so if it's your ascendant, then that definitely will show up like that. It's you, the ascendant is you. And if it's your moon, you may have just felt like even if you were in a room full of people, you may have felt a bit isolated and alone. And then all of a sudden it starts to feel okay. Like you go from feeling a little bit lonely and nobody kind of understanding you to realizing actually there's some really great things about being a bit marginal because these people are crazy and I don't want to be like them. And so this is a phase where you're going to go right through till the end of May. And as you're growing in your friendships now, you're going to find that you're making friends, you're making connections, you're networking with people who will be lasting connections, and that the dreams and the vision that you have for your future, that's a lasting vision. This is not sort of a flippant, lighthearted social acquaintance that you're connecting with. You're done with that at this particular stage of your life with Saturn in the 11th house. You just don't feel like hanging out and chit-chatting with people who don't share your vision. They don't share your either immediate needs and like for example, you're a parent now and you want to talk about those things or you need support with those things. And so you're not interested in people sitting around talking about, I don't know, whatever other people talk about when you're not a parent, dating, let's say. Hopefully not. Anyway, so there we are. So that's you, Taurus, and I wish you every success. I wish you lots of good friends that you have for many, many years, like I was able to make, and you know that they're there for you all those years later. So moving right along, we have now Gemini on the first house, and that means Saturn is in your house of career, and it has been since March of 2023. And so for Gemini, Sun or Ascendant particularly strongly, this is going to be very powerful around your career status around the goals and the ambitions that you have in terms of the work that you do. If it's the sun, but you're no longer working or you're not needing to work, then it's more about how you see yourself and how you reach out into the world. Um, and then if it's the moon, it's much more about your internalization of your goals in terms of how you want to show up in the world, how you feel about that. You might find yourself a little bit shy or timid or intimidated with a Gemini moon, for example, initially when Saturn goes through the 10th. And then at a certain point, you start to feel more comfortable, more confident with reaching out into new roles of responsibility, a new status like married, for example, or divorce for that matter, becoming a parent or becoming an empty nester or whatever. And so there's something here that you're now having gone through the retrograde phase, you realize where you may have needed to put more effort in to the work that you were doing, or that you've gone through a testing time, let's say, extra responsibility or extra work. And you've come out, or you were coming out of this, you're now moving forward into this Saturn now direct phase for the rest of 2024 and the first 5 months of 2025, where you're just growing through your career. You're going to expand in terms of your authority. People will start to see you as an authority, or you will engage much more with authority figures in a way that you learn and become a source of reliability or stability for your team, for example. Now, Saturn's going to come back into that place in the last couple of months of 2025 until February 2026. It's just going to go in to the first, well, to from 25 degrees until the end of Pisces in that period of time. So you might just have to come back and again test your skills, test your seniority, test your capacity to show up as an expert or as somebody who is a reference. This can also be, depending on the age that you're in right now, where you start to realize that you have to become your own authority. You have to become the person that decides what you want to do in your career. Whereas prior to that, you may have found that either society or your parents or some idea of what success was driving you, and now you have to figure that out for yourself. You need to figure out what is success in my terms, what is the thing that I want to do in my terms. So, Gemini, if you are becoming a parent, for example, then that also is symbolized by Saturn in the 10th, because there's more responsibility that's also a social responsibility. It's interesting how people see people who become parents. It's like when you're a young person with no children, or let's say a person with no children, people respond to you instinctively or unconsciously in a particular way. And when you become a parent, people respond to you in a different way. And that's because it's assumed, it's not always true, but it's assumed that parents somehow take on that Saturnian quality of responsibility. And that may or may not be true, as I say, but that is the perception. And so this is also you showing up socially with a little more gravitas. And so for some Geminis, that will feel new. Gemini is often considered to be a bit flippant and a bit sort of happy-go-lucky, maybe even childish at times in social demeanor. And this will be different now for most Geminis. This will be different. So yeah, and with Jupiter going through your first house, you and Jupiter currently retrograde as well, ruling that Saturn, you are personally implicated in this. It's something that people will notice in you. So you are growing anyway, Gemini, especially if this is the rising sign, but also particularly for the sun, you're growing in public stature, let's say. So there you go. The fun and games are all over, Gemini. No, I'm just kidding. All right, here we go. So now we've got Cancer. Now, my fellow Cancers, my fellow Cancerians, we have this Saturn in the ninth. You might have heard me at the beginning talking about my publishing woes, and so if you're working on a book, I sympathize with you, because I could imagine that there's something holding you back at this point. And Saturn has been going over the perhaps the sense of your faith. Now, ninth house represents faith as well. It represents your political beliefs or your spiritual beliefs or your psychological or what do you call it, philosophical outlook on life. And so there also can be wavering around that, some doubt, especially in the beginning. So maybe not by now, but certainly 2023, the first bit of 2024, as Saturn has gone back over the same degrees that it was. And Saturn has now landed where it was in March, for example. You're going to recover all of the territory that you already went through from March of 2024 and forward. And you're going to have a new vision for all of that, a new notion of what was necessary or possible, how you want to go forward with all of those decisions, how you want to, where you feel confident putting your faith. Again, it can be this much like with Aries, for example, who had this kind of test of faith through the 12th house. This can be a bit of a test of faith as well, where you're doubting perhaps a connection, or you might be doubting a teacher, for example. You're doubting somebody who's given you counsel. Maybe there's been a feeling of wavering around a I don't know, like a course of instruction, for example, or a way of looking at the world where prior to that you felt confident, now you're in a phase of doubt. But that's okay. It's the Saturn going through the ninth house is inciting us to question and to understand what is true, what is real about this, what has substance and what doesn't have substance. So it's very beneficial in Pisces overall to have the Saturn energy because it provides substance to something that by definition doesn't have any. So that also will give you a more of a cornerstone of faith and even potentially put you in a position of teaching, put you in a role of reference or counselor or teacher, um, lawyer, for that matter. Anybody who is working, it's that power behind the throne kind of energy, which the ninth house carries. And so whatever you felt you weren't capable of doing, or whatever you felt you needed to change or review or go over, now it seems like that's unsticking and you're ready to take on the task. You may not feel fully ready until Saturn gets back to the place where it was when it stationed in June. You may not feel fully ready to embrace that, but that's fine. It's going to come up soon. You'll be experiencing that already by March. So March, April, you'll be back on track, and all of that will have proven to you your capabilities, what you know, that you have enough knowledge and seniority and gravitas now to do the task that you're asked to do or that you've chosen to do as well, because the ninth house is your vision. It's your sense of what you're here for. That also might have been what you've been revising, where the ninth house has had you question, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right job? And I suspect that that is something that only fleetingly crossed your mind because the Jupiter in the 12th is holding fast. It's ruling Saturn from this 12th house place of confidence, unless the Jupiter retrograde has also damaged your confidence. But all that to say that Saturn going through your ninth direct now is going to take you on a bigger journey, expanding into something that just grows and grows over the next few months, because as Saturn then eventually meets up with Neptune, meets the North Node, and then moves into your 10th house, whatever you're developing now until the end of May is to be brought out into the world, whatever this is, even if it's in a minor way and it's more along the lines of how you personally show up in the world. It doesn't mean you have to go public with something or or become necessarily known for something. It's just how you bring it out into the world, how you bring perhaps yourself out into the world. But it could very well be you bringing the thing out, because from June next year, for another year after that, Jupiter will be in your first house. And so that is something that you're ready to develop and grow through. So that's for Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Rising. For Cancer, because you're ruled by the moon, I feel it's very important. The Cancer emotional nature needs to line up with what you do. You have to like what you do or you don't do it. That's just the way that goes. So if you're a Cancer moon, If it's the Cancer rising, that just goes without saying because that's how your life will show up. These are the areas of life that shows up in. And if it's the Sun, that is how you see yourself participating in life. So that's part of your vision of your life, your sense of consciousness, which also reflects the ninth house. So I'd say that it's almost equal for the Cancer to have this experience of Saturn in the ninth. So it will definitely start to feel progressively freer, let's say, or more, you'll be more confident as you're moving forward with Saturn going there through the ninth house. So make the most of that, Cancer. I'll see you in the next video. And Leo, you have Saturn in the eighth house. And I know you have Mars in the first house as well. I'm going to ignore that Mars and we're just going to talk about Saturn. Now, you're all full of beans, but Mars is also moving very slowly. So you might have kind of some ideas and then you're just pulling back a little bit. But don't worry, in April, that all sorts itself out. So focus on the Saturn for the moment. The Saturn in the eighth house is perhaps having to overcome fear. And those fears are often, especially for Leo, it can be reputational. It can be how you feel about your status, your um, what do people think of you, or what do people want to support you in? Because the eighth house is not just financial support, like the things that you share financially, but it also is moral support that you get from other people. It can also be money that you get from clients. And so that's not necessarily going anywhere. It's just that things might feel a little bit less um, flush at the moment. Things might feel a little bit less available to you. Maybe feeling like you're kind of cast out on, people have either they're too busy with other things or that you've got to really sort out a way for you to take care of everything without necessarily being able to rely on other people. There may be an actual loss of somebody that might have been dear to you, or there's just a separation in a relationship for geographical reasons, or a divorce or separation that's happening in a marriage, for example, or marriage type of relationship. And you feel perhaps emotionally a little cut off, a little isolated. This can happen. This is life, unfortunately. That's the way it goes. Um, and so Saturn going through the eighth house, and especially if this is your moon, I think you'll probably feel that. It can feel heavy, it can feel really challenging, but it's definitely passing. And what you learn as Saturn starts to move direct, Saturn has already been there nearly 2 years at this point. It's like a year and a half at least, and you're used to this feeling. You're used to whatever this is, but the retrograde might make it feel more like a struggle. And now, as Saturn goes direct, you are starting to feel more self-reliant, more capable. You're able to overcome things. You're able to really plow through. The other aspect of the eighth house, of course, is the sort of the mystery school or the occult aspect of it. If you're watching astrology, I'm guessing that's part of what you're interested in. And so there might be also a determination to know more. It's really Saturn is where we really want to dig into the weeds and try to understand and become an expert, become a master, to master a topic, for example. And that in the eighth house would be something of the occult practices, whether it's astrology or something else. And so that works really well for you. If this is the way that you're working with that energy, you may not feel that at all as negative. You may feel that, in fact, as something very positive, and instead, what happens is that you're pulling your attention away from other relationships, especially perhaps maybe intimate connections, or just having less time for that, and you're putting more of your time on your studies and on your practices, which might involve esoteric practices or ethical practices that require you to isolate yourself or require you to be, um, I don't know, sexually abstinent or something like that. So all these things are possible. And if Saturn is going direct, it feels like, okay, now I'm understanding why I'm doing this. I really start to get it. And this will build and build until May. And you're going to have that even more. The momentum picks up even more when the North Node goes through there at the same time. So, of course, if it's Leo Sun, this is very much you because that is your ruler. The sun is your ruler, so you can consider that that's very, very important for you to observe the sun moving through your sign or through any uh, house from your sign. In this case, the eighth house from the sun, and if it's the ascendant, as I say, it's very literal. This is where the action is. So there may be some dispute or something that has happened in marriage, or there's something that needs your attention within marriage. This would be an ideal time, for example, to do counseling because Saturn is about getting serious and restructuring things. And so that could be a good practice or something that is worth doing. Same thing for therapy of any kind, psychotherapy or any other therapeutic treatment, because Saturn in the eighth means that you're ready and willing to do this work, and it will have lasting results. So, whatever this is for you, Leo, I hope it's a long-term success, and I will see you in the next video. So, Virgo, Saturn has been in your house of relationships since March of 2023, and that will have changed your dynamics with important relationships, whether it's dear friends or a loved one, your life partner, clients, if you work that way, or business partners, for example. And and so this often reshapes relationships. It might mean that you need to put better boundaries around relationships. And when Saturn is retrograde, it might feel like none of the relationships fit, or there's something that prevents you from really connecting. It's been as since the end of June, it's been retrograding, and now it's slowly starting to move ahead. And so, whatever that obstacle was, or whatever this questioning perhaps around certain relationships, or the feeling of stuckness, this sort of trial period, maybe if you're in a new relationship, it starts to take on a more progressive shape. It starts to move in a direction that you feel like, okay, now we can go somewhere, we can work with this now, and we're moving in a new direction. Um, I noticed that the chart now reads 16th of November. Just keep in mind this change is happening on the 15th. It's just because I keep moving the clock face forward. And so you're seeing your sign on the horizon. So Saturn in the seventh also is a very good time when Saturn is moving direct. And I think you probably want to wait also until Jupiter in your 10th house is moving direct. So that's after the 4th of February. When that's moving direct, it can be a really good time for establishing business partners or even getting into a committed relationship because you're serious about it. You're committed. It's like, okay, we've done the hard work. Any relationship that can survive Saturn going through the seventh house is a solid one. It's one that will last, and it's changed you for whatever. I was going to say for the better, but that's not necessarily guaranteed, but it's definitely changed you, and it has stabilized something about your relationships, and that will have a lasting quality. So you want to get to this place where you're really feeling like this is the person I want in my life, and I won't tolerate this, and I will draw the boundaries at that, and I need to change myself in regards to how I allow or don't allow certain behaviors. And as Saturn is moving now direct and moving right through the rest of your seventh house until the end of May, you have a great opportunity to really establish something quite lasting and serious. And and so you're in for in a similar way, for example, to Saturn being in the 11th, you're in for a cycle where the people who are in your life who remain here through 2025 are dear friends or serious relationships or committed business partners or clients that you have learned from and that you stabilize your business around, for example. So very, very helpful, even if in the beginning it can feel like there's tension and conflict or even distance and separation and even a lack, what might feel like a lack, and then turns into quality over quantity, for example. So good luck with that, Virgo. I'll see you in the next video. Right. So now Libra, we have Saturn in your sixth house. Sixth house is never the fun place in the in the astrology. Saturn tends to do very well for Libra, so that actually works in your favor. But Saturn in the sixth house will have shown you whatever obstacles or issues you need to deal with in terms of your everyday work, or the way that you might show up for other people in a way that is not leaving you much space, not leaving you either enough time for yourself, or not even feeling that you had much choice around the matter. This dynamic for Libra between the 6th and the 12th is that Pisces Virgo dynamic where there can be the victim martyr syndrome. And so any notion of sacrificing yourself, any notion of being there and overgiving, especially since Neptune is also there at the same time, that's been since March 2011. The Saturn going through there is has been showing you where it's not comfortable for you to always say yes when you really mean no. That's part of the thing that the South Node is helping you with. And now that Saturn is moving direct and will continue its journey through the sixth house, you have an opportunity to see really clearly, this is the kind of life I want to lead. This is my day to day. This is what I want to do in work. This is the structure I want with my employees. This is the structure I want with my colleagues. Sorry, I've been talking a lot this week, so I'm losing my voice. See, there you go. Overgiving, sixth house, health issues. That's why I'm going to India. Right. So, so that Saturn is showing you where you have learned the lesson about how you show up and how you might need to change your or restructure your world, your day-to-day life, your the practicalities, or even take better care of your health. And the structures that you can rely on. That's the sixth house in terms of your everyday health habits and things. So whatever you understood since June, you're definitely working your way through again with a clarity that may have come through pain, come through the hard way. You realize now you're in trouble because you overworked or you overgave, and the expectations have been created that you will always be there for somebody, and now you realize that you should have said no. Now you start saying no. This is it. Libra, it can be incredibly helpful to really be serious about the last. Even if you start looking at what you've gone through since March of 2024, so from March right through till November, because that's where Saturn is now. It was there in March. So if you go right from March through to November and just notice where were the pain points in your everyday life? Where were the pain points in terms of what you said you would do for other people? Where were you showing up for everybody but yourself? Where were you? Where did you not have a choice? And that happens. If you've got a family member who's ill, or if you yourself have been ill, then there's a restriction around your everyday life. And that restriction is teaching you something. When you can learn the lessons of your illness or the lessons of how to serve other people when they need you, with humility, but not by being a servant, being of service, not being a servant. This is the bigger lesson for Libra right now. All right. Good luck with all that, Libra, and I'll see you in the next video. Scorpio, Saturn has been in your fifth house, which is a little bit heavy for love and for your creativity. It would have either made you feel a little bit disconnected from those things or that you would have had to make more effort. Maybe the relationship dynamic felt a little bit stilted and things needed to change a wee bit. You've got Jupiter in the eighth, so it can't have been that bad. But at the same time, sometimes Jupiter in the eighth can actually represent infidelity or issues around intimacy that actually pose challenges in a relationship. That I'm not saying that that's true for everybody, by the way. If you have a Scorpio rising, just saying, it's possible for some of you that has driven a bit of a wedge between you and a lover or loved one, especially as Jupiter's retrograding. But again, it's that would have to show up already natally before this is happening. I don't want to sow any seeds of doubt. But the Saturn in the fifth house also can have some influence on your creative expression, where I don't know, maybe you lost a little confidence around your talents, or maybe you just lost your mojo, just felt like you just became frustrating or boring or more like a job. Now, here's the interesting part. If you have Saturn going through your fifth house, it actually works really well to make your hobby or your passion or your favorite thing to do part of your work. And if it's not part of your work, it can actually be your company or your employment, your regular work. It's an entrepreneurial house, and you can turn I don't know, like if you are you love dancing, and then all of a sudden you realize, you know what, I just want to be a dancer, then you become the dancer, and that's your devotion to your craft, let's say, with Saturn going through the fifth house. Now, as Saturn goes direct, all of those aspects of doing that are easier. They find the solution. Saturn going through the fifth house can also be where there can be challenges with children. This would perhaps also be even more so if it's your ascendant or your moon, but even still as the sun. Um, so it represents your offspring in in terms of your actual children or your actual biological or even non-biological children, but it also is all the babies that you create in terms of projects and business endeavors and things like that. But if it is your actual biological children or little human beings that you look after and care for as if they're your own, there may have been a time that was for them very difficult that you had to support them through, and that felt a bit like a burden for you, either emotionally or in terms of time. But then things, when Saturn stations direct and starts moving through more and more increasingly quickly through the fifth house, you start to realize that it's okay, you can handle it. It has given you a new frame of reference for your relationship with your children, and if you did the parenting thing right, then the children also see you as something that they can lean on. And when you go through those difficult patches, it actually reinforces the bond between parent and child. But you have to show up. That's the Saturn in the fifth house. You have to show up, whether it's for your child or for your business or for your creative projects or for your lover. You have to show up and say, look, I'm willing to be here for you. And that's the Saturn direct now. You're ready to show up. All the doubts and confusion and perhaps challenges for whichever reason are have been at least noticed and seen and understood. And now you're going to come back and smooth them all out with the benefit of hindsight now. So make the most of that, Scorpio, and I will see you in the next video about the full moon in your seventh house. And Sagittarius, this has been happening in your fourth house since March of 2023. You've had Saturn going through the fourth. That's been one of the challenges for Sagittarius over the last couple of years, because it can make you feel quite heavy emotionally, struggling, potentially feeling a bit of a heavy heart, or feeling psychologically down, deflated, discouraged in some ways. Um, that won't be true for everyone because that depends on your natal chart, but certainly at times when Saturn goes through the fourth house, it can feel very, very heavy. There can be issues around the mother, the loss of a mother, or some disconnection with the mother. And that can also be around your lineage in general, feeling disconnected from the lineage, or feeling this sense of suddenly now you're the senior member of the family. You're suddenly the matriarch or the patriarch of the family, where there was a parent before you or there were grandparents before you, and you're starting to feel your mortality with reference to your family and your lineage. Your psychological state is also tested when Saturn goes through the fourth house. You're tested to find this foundation, the thing that what is that? I think Michael Beckwith said this thing years ago. I can't remember now what he said exactly, but it was something like, to find that foundation that can't, oh gosh, I'm going to mess this up. Find the unshakable foundation I'm going to mess this up. I'll try and find the quote and I'll put it in the box below. I'll put it in the comments below the video because it's a good one. Basically, it's like saying you're going to find your stability to be unshakable, and that you are in this place of having a very solid basis psychologically, emotionally, and even materially to grow from as Saturn starts to climb back up into the top of your chart when it moves out of Pisces, which it will do on the 25th of May. It will come back, but by that point, you're really far along in the process. So this is a really good place to recognize that if you are going through some heaviness, if you're going through some difficulties around home, or if you're having issues around housing, where do I live? How do I live? Can I afford to live here, etc. That this is a temporary thing. It's not a magic bullet that says, by the way, it'll all be fine by the 25th of May. It's just to say that this is a necessary stage in your material and then even psycho-emotional development, or in the relationship with your wider family. And the more that you step up and you handle that and you accept the restructuring in whatever way, shape, or form it might be that might be needed for you to find a more solid psychological foundation, the better things will be for you overall. Um, and certainly, I think by the time Jupiter stations direct on the 4th of February, and then from that point on, you will also find a lot more upliftment because having your ruler Jupiter retrograde as well as Saturn retrograde in your fourth house is just really uncomfortable. That's where the squares have been. And we'll talk more about those squares in another video, but it's good to just know this is a phase, it's a time, and it's not a lifetime. It's just now. All right. So good luck with all of that, Sagittarius, and I'll see you in the next video. Capricorn, Saturn is your ruler. We're not going to talk about Pluto because we've done enough talking about Pluto, except to say, well done. And now you've got Saturn in the third house. And that Saturn in the third can have you perhaps learning new skills or having to go kind of through all kinds of hoops to understand something, to develop a new skill set, or learn a language, or learn coding, or go through some kind of practical education that you needed to get training in. You may have had some issues of communication that have put you at a distance with people around you. You may have felt isolated within your community. You may have, because of a move, for example, or because of your work circumstances, you may feel isolated even from your neighbors. You might have this feeling you don't even know your neighbors, or you haven't connected with people through, that the usual exchanges and communication. And the retrograde can be even more isolating. It can make you feel even more kind of off grid, or just not really connecting with the people around you, or not connecting in the way that you communicate. So you may have felt that you actually deliberately wanted to withdraw. This is your ruler after all, so it tends to function pretty well for you. And it's sextiling to you, so it may have been a deliberate choice. I just need more time to myself. I don't want to be, connecting with all and sundry. I don't want to talk about politics. I don't want to talk about whatever. And so now when Saturn stations and starts increasingly moving faster through Pisces, and then grows through your third house, you will have picked up a lot of skills in terms of your perhaps also business skills. The third house is commerce, but it can be around your communication skills, your confidence around that, your connections with people who are there in your everyday life, um, even your connections with siblings. They may have been tested. Your connections with cousins and extended family, those may have been tested. And you just find your cruising speed, whether that means that you come to a better place, or where you realize I'm happy with this distance. It works for me. That's putting a boundary there in a place that needed a boundary. Um, Third house, third house. Third house is willpower as well. So whatever you may have lacked in terms of discipline, self-discipline, meaning you will certainly have figured out that you needed to develop, or that you were somehow obligated or forced to develop willpower over this period of time since June, maybe even since March. You could look back and see how this is panning out from that point on. And you now get it, and you start to appreciate the need to have like ongoing structure and skills that you work at. If you're a musician, you've got to practice your instrument. If you're a writer, you have to sit down and write every day and do your thing. Um, if you're learning a language, you have to practice that, for example. So that Saturn now puts you in this situation where you realize, yeah, that I'm really ready to be disciplined about this, and you become a much better craftsperson or student, or even teacher for that matter, as a result. So you gain mastery. So if you're working on a skill, or even if you're working on developing your business, okay, I need to check my emails every morning and not at 2 in the morning. I need to create a schedule that works for my business, that works for me too. So those are the Saturn blessings. And now that Saturn is moving direct, you can really get stuff done, because Saturn in the third, when it's direct and starting to pick up speed, especially since you have Jupiter who is ruling it in your sixth house, will make you work very, very hard, but you know why you're doing it. And you have a lot of joy while you're doing it with Jupiter in the sixth. So it's looking pretty good for Capricorn all in all. So make the most of that, and I'll see you in the next video. Aquarius, Saturn also rules you. And as a result, it's also favorable to Aquarius. You're probably looking at your expenses, or you're looking at whatever supports you. That might even be including habits like eating habits, the kind of food that you eat, especially as Jupiter's in the fifth, and there can be a wee bit of self-indulgence involved in that. Um, Jupiter in the fifth can also be around investments or gambling as well. And Saturn in the second has shown you where that might need to be reined in or taken more seriously. If it's about investing, that Saturn is also very helpful, because you feel in the mood to organize your finances in a way that you're saving. And then this is, that chunk is for savings, that's for investing. This is the budget. So, creating a family budget, or creating a budget for future savings and purchasing a home, for example, this is very, very helpful with Saturn going through the second, and especially when it's moving direct. It feels like whatever felt awkward or unfamiliar becomes familiar, and it becomes easier as you go forward. I did this in 2017. I trained with Marissa Peer to do hypnotherapy. She's brilliant. And one of the things that I used to remember her saying was, you have to make the unfamiliar familiar. And that Saturn in its retrograde feels like things are unfamiliar. And so that quality of Saturn retrograding is kind of like, um, it's like you have to learn what it is that you don't know yet. You have to figure out, what don't I know that I need to know? And then you figure out, oh, I needed to know that, and I needed to work on that. And especially in terms of money for you, or especially in terms of your self-worth, where you may have felt not as worthy, not worth what you were, you maybe didn't, you doubted your capacity to earn money, for example, or you doubted your value, your prices were too low. Now, with Saturn moving direct, this is going to be easier to restructure. You become familiar with a new way of being. You make that unfamiliar thing, like a helpful habit, or investing or whatever. You make it familiar, and it works for you. And this is your ruler in the second house. Now, that's not going to be true for everybody, but especially because it's your ruler, you're going to get the most out of this passage of Saturn there. So, yeah, good luck with all of that, Aquarius, and we will see you in the next video. Oopsie, we missed Pisces. Sorry, Pisces. This is all about you. So Saturn is in the first house for Pisces. It has been since March of 2023. And this is, of course, for your sun, your moon, and your ascendant. It doesn't even matter what you have in Pisces because Saturn is going to touch it. So it's for Pisces of all descriptions. And Saturn being there is influencing your sense of self, influencing your sense of maybe even your physical sense. You may have felt tired, you may have felt limited, restricted. I have a Pisces stellium. I can tell you, I have really been tired. I've been working probably twice as hard over the last couple of years as I have in the last 10 years. And I knew why I was doing it, but it's nonetheless quite tiring. And so you now with Saturn moving direct, you have a sense of the why you did all those things, why you needed to do this or that, what you still need to do to reorganize yourself, to be well physically, to get stuff done, and how you need to reorganize your time or your effort, your energy to get stuff done. Um, and how you need to show up, perhaps in a way that feels more like an authority or a person that is reliable or a reference type person. Saturn is about mastery. So in the case of Pisces in the first house, in terms of Pisces in general, sun, moon, or rising, you're having mastery over yourself. If it's your moon, you're recognizing where it's important to have mastery over your emotions and your mind, so you don't let yourself go into all kinds of soap operas and dramas, which Pisces can often get involved in, or especially Pisces moon can be very emotionally sensitive, and it's good to be able to say, that's not me, that's not about me. If it's a Pisces sun, then it's more with reference to you and your person, your image of yourself, or your career, or your way of being out in the world. And you want to really see, who am I now? Who am I? What am I doing? Who am I? How do I show up in the world? What is my role in the world? And of course, if it's your ascendant sign, then this is very, very much you, but it also affects every area of your life. It's kind of like saying, how do I do my life now? And that's something that you will have understood with the retrograde. There's a certain amount of dissatisfaction that can be quite personal on whatever front that is. And then once Saturn starts to move direct, there's a feeling of, oh, right, I've got this, I can do this. Um, so Pisces, you would have had Saturn going through your first house if you are old enough in 90, the end of 94, 95, and 96. So it's not, if you're old enough to recall going back, you know that it's like you've done this before and it brought you to a new place. And having Saturn in your own sign is a way of stabilizing something that you see of yourself. And whatever age you are that happens, it's going to stabilize you in terms of this feeling around who you are. So you do have Jupiter, which is your ruler in the fourth house at this time, and that actually is quite good because Jupiter in the fourth can bring you a feeling of psychological satisfaction, just personal joy, a lot more fun or abundance. And so that lightens at least one of the years of Saturn in Pisces. It lightens up the energy a little bit. And then Jupiter will move into your fifth house, whether it's from the ascendant sun or moon. And then Jupiter is trining back to the Saturn that it rules, or at least for part of the time. And Jupiter in the fifth house is in great dignity. So when your ruler is in great dignity, then when Saturn moves back in from the end of 2025 and into February 2026, you'll feel like, oh, all of that, I get it now. And all of that, it was really worth it. And it brought me to this place. And so very empowering and uplifting potential there. And of course, that depends on everybody's natal chart, but the potential is very positive. So if you're struggling at the moment, then really look back over the year since March, meaning from March 2024, and go back over what was the thing that you needed to work on, what was your ambition, whether it's your professional ambition or your personal ambition, maybe even your emotional ambition, or what was going on in terms of your mother or your own desire to become a mother, for example, and all of those things start to make sense, you need to, let's say, take yourself more seriously, not in a way that makes you dour or unfriendly, but just take yourself more seriously and be your own boss, be your own authority to allow you to achieve the things that you want to achieve. Um, and that may not be the natural inclination for Pisces, but it will take you very far. It will really boost you over the long run. And this is a transit, whether it's your first house for your ascendant or the sun or the moon, it's a transit that will be basically with you. It's the starting of a cycle, a personal cycle of nearly 3 decades. So you're just starting something here, Pisces. So let it have a solid foundation. So thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. For those of you who are still here with me now, I'm going to be a month in India from the 15th, from that famous day, the 15th of November until the 15th of December. So I will be trying to upload things before that and a couple of times maybe when I'm gone, but it's not necessarily sure. And so then I would certainly see you when I come back in December, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed after 28 days of an Ayurvedic cleanse. So I wish you all the best, and I will see you in the next video.